Hey everyone! I want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to my presentation about WordNerd. WordNerd is a vocabulary app designed to provide quick and easy access to words, definitions, and learning tools. Before we get into the app though, I'd like you to meet Jordan. Jordan is a practicing attorney. She's from Dallas, 32, and she's married. She's also very new in her field of work, so she can get self-conscious at times. Jordan wants to make sure that when she speaks and writes, it comes off as professional. She wants to make sure she understands what she's saying, and she also wants to make sure that she says it correctly. Her motivation to do a good job is knowing that her clients are going through a stressful time. She wants them to have confidence in what she's doing. Now, Jordan, like every young professional, doesn't have a lot of free time. The free time she does have, Jordan would prefer to spend it with her husband and her dogs. So, she doesn't have time for lengthy lessons. She needs quick and easy lessons, and she also needs to be able to use different ways to learn vocabulary. She can't simply see a word in the definition and retain the information. I believe WordNerd is a category-specific app with pre-programmed terms, pre-programmed decks, easy-to-search functions, and it also provides visual and auditory learning. So it's going to provide Jordan with the perfect tool that allows her to easily learn new vocabulary and use it with confidence. To start the process, I began with user flows. I took 2 tasks from the app and I laid out the process that would need to be completed in order to complete the task. From there I moved to wireframing. This was the basic layout of the app, how each page flowed into the next, and kind of the design elements of the app as well. Once that was done, I was able to move on to the prototype. During the prototype stage, I asked users to complete a set of direct tasks. During these tasks, I observed, took notes, and then asked them questions once they were finished. The task included creating a new account, searching for vocabulary categories, creating a new deck, modifying an existing deck, and using the flashcard learning tool. Well, I immediately found out my prototype was far from perfect. Every user found some aspects a little bit easier, a little bit harder, but ultimately there were improvements to be made with each task. When creating a new account, it was pointed out that you couldn't go back to the login page. So if someone already had an account, they were kind of stuck. In searching for existing categories, users felt kind of directed. I failed to make all the icon options available for use and for clicking, so it was hard to say if people actually understood what to do with this task, or if they just did it because it was the only option to click on. Adding a new deck. This one seemed to be pretty easy and self-explanatory for users. However, it was notated that once you create a deck, you don't have the option to create another one. You have to go back to the home page and start the whole process over again. In modifying decks, this was actually the task that was hardest for all users. It was hard to find where to modify. Being that it was grouped with create new task, didn't really make much sense. And once on the modification screen, the only option was to add words. And the flashcard tool. All users actually said this was the easiest task to complete, except for, of course, creating an account. The only mention was that the page itself was a little messy. Some of the icon buttons did the same thing. So it was a little confusing, the navigation process. With these thoughts in mind, I decided to make improvements. I included a back button on the Create Account screen. I made sure all icons could be selected to make sure that users actually understood the process and the task that was being asked of them. And I made sure to include in the Create New Deck the option to actually create a new deck or move forward and finish to the home page. I also went ahead and separated the Modify and Create Deck selection. I made it a little bit easier to find, and I made sure to include an onboarding page for modifying the decks so users understood this process. You can now add and subtract words. For the flashcard function, I went ahead and cleaned up the page just so there's no confusion on how to navigate through the process. So of course, I'll continue usability tests. I'll continue usability tests on the new prototype and make adjustments as needed until the product is completed. I'm hoping to add at least 2 additional learning tools as well, so that everyone's style of learning is accommodated. It was interesting for this being the first prototype I've ever completed. I think as designers, you get used to how your app is supposed to function, and so you just assume that it is. It's not until you watch users run through the process and observe how they react to certain things that you realize you need a lot of work. There's a lot of work to go. No prototype's going to be perfect on the first try, and there's always room for improvements. We as designers just have to be willing to test, and test again until we get the results we want. I think some of the pros during this learning experience have been information architecture and user flows. It's very important to lay out the process before starting. User testing, of course. I mean, you want to see if it works in the first place. And of course, you want to see what doesn't work so you can fix it. Some of the cons, in my personal opinion, it's having to pull information during interviews and while their users are testing the product. I think some people don't know how to tell you what's not right, and I think some people don't want to for fear of hurting your feelings. And, well, presenting one's work. Constructive criticism is always great, but of course it can be a bit scary when you're new to UX design. So again, I'd like to say thank you for taking the time to see my presentation about WordNerd. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.